Big game coming up as the Chicago Bears take on the Washington Commanders, but it's a short week. We're not even done with Sunday yet. Nick and I are going to break down everything you need to know about Sunday's game against the Broncos, as well as everything you need to know about the Commanders game on this episode of Bear With Us. What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to Bear With Us. I'm Robert Schmitz, the editor of the Bears blog, and with me is Nick Whalen of Football Guys, as always. And Nick, I hear you've got a little quiz for me, so I'm just going to pass things straight off to you, and we'll get right into it. How you doing?
Well, I'm doing well, man. I mean, I'm healing from, Sunday's Bears loss, but as you know, we've talked about, and I put this on Twitter, I won a lot of money in DFS, so I can't be super upset, but I'm burning on something with the Bears. And so I've got a little bit of a deep dive here, starting with the quiz, and I'll ask you, but then also listeners, you guys can follow along and you guys can answer. And then it's going to dive deep into something I'm burning on, which is going to be controversial. Okay.
Let's do it. I love controversial.
So, as if you guys have been listening to this show, we use PFF as this third party, right? It's nice that it bounces off of what we see on film most of the time. I think we're in close agreement with what PFF does. Mm-hmm. So I did, and if you guys are watching on YouTube, I took a whole legal pad sheet here of notes of PFF. Okay, and this is the grades and rankings per position group of Chicago Bears this year,
okay,
and then what they had last year. So I'm not going to include the punter and kicker, which have gotten in better this year versus last year. But Robert, there are 33 veterans between offense and defense, so we can't include rookies because we don't have their PFF grade. So 33 total that have a grade this year, and they've had a grade last year,
okay,
right? There are only 5 offensive guys and 2 defensive guys that have improved their PFF score from last year to this year. Name them.
Okay, so the 2 defensive guys, one of them has to be Andrew Billings.
Correct.
I find it hard to believe that that's not Andrew Billings.
Now here's going to be a shocker for you. Andrew Billings only went up 0.7.
Seriously, is it because they credited the season against the Raiders so well, and the last 2 weeks as the Chiefs and Broncos sort of avoided him? They basically didn't give him like the 90s that he had the other weeks.
Yeah, he came back down to earth a little bit, but he's
playing great ball.
He's ranked 15th overall among D tackles, and I think he was like 18th last year. So
he's still, hilariously enough, one of the Bears' primary sources of pressure on passing downs.
Yeah.
But we got Billings. And then I was trying to think about this because I had a feeling you were going to ask me who they were. And so I've got 2 guesses, but I'll start with a yes-no question. Is it a DB?
Yes.
I would guess it's Kyler Gordon.
No, so I didn't include him because he has such a small sample size.
That's the thing. I'm happy you said that because I was like, surely it has to be Kyler. I know he graded pretty well because he played pretty well.
Right, but his minimum snap count isn't close. I'm like, it's not fair.
His grade was abysmal last year too, so I was like, that's got to be it. Is it Jalen Johnson?
It is Jalen Johnson.
That's what I thought.
So Jalen Johnson, for people that don't know, is crushing it according to PFF, and I think he's playing well on film. He's the 9th highest corner in PFF. His grade last year was 62.9. He increased it to 80.1, which is a significant jump. I mean, if you look, and we talked about this, 70 is probably the baseline for you're doing well. You have a good season. I would say 65 to 70 is probably average. So 80 is really, really good. So those are the 2 defensive guys. Offense.
Okay, so and it's 5 guys.
Yep, and I'll put this out there. One of the guys I included off of a small sample size.
Okay.
So that's reaching for a positive.
These are people that aren't rookies. Okay.
Not rookies.
So Khalil Herbert has to be on this list.
Yes, Khalil Herbert. So he went from 72.5 last year, and again, he was very efficient, up to 82.9, and he's the 4th highest graded running back right now.
He ruled. He ruled on Sunday. This is a great way to review Sunday really fast.
It is.
So I would bet, because I'm trying to get ahead of the curve here, that Justin Fields is on this list because he graded pretty well on last week's game, which was abysmal offensive outing. Like the whole game plan, quarterback involved, it was just terrible, but he
Yep.
executed his part within it. And then in this week, he had so many throws in the first half that were just sparklers. I mean, you don't end up with a plus 18 completion percentage over expectation on
Right.
accident. I mean, he
Right.
was ballin'. And
Yeah.
so I have a feeling that outweighed the two other games in which he wasn't bad. He just might not have been good. And so
Yes.
that's got to be pushing him up, right?
Right. Right. So here's the thing. So we know how much Justin Fields has not run this year,
Right.
which helps out because that grade goes into the overall average. He is up point 0.4 is it, which
Oh,
19th
man.
overall quarterback, but he's up 0.4. So
That's
he includes
hilarious.
for a positive. Yep.
That's hilarious.
Mhm.
Third, I'm going to guess DJ Moore.
Yes. DJ Moore is up
A little.
2.5
I was like, it
overall.
can't be much
Nope.
because they had him graded as just okay in Carolina. If I had to guess, he's still below 2 years ago in what he graded with Carolina. Now you may not know that off the top of your head.
I don't have it off the top of my head. I
but
can look it up as we go.
last year he was he went down himself. So this is somewhere between a dead cat bounce and the fact that he's also balling. Separate thing.
So let's look. So overall, ooh, that's very good memory, Robert. So he's overall 76.4 is his grade, 18th best receiver.
Mhm.
You go back to 2019, 2020, and 2021. Those are all above his grade this year. So there's hope for him to get better.
Exactly. I mean, he's a beast. And last year's Carolina offense was not healthy. The Bears offense this year is not healthy. And regardless of how the season finishes, Nick, if the Bears win 15 games from here, whatever's left on the schedule, or they lose them all, DJ Moore is somebody I'm incredibly excited to have.
Yes.
Okay, so more guessing.
So you have two left.
Cole Kmet's got to be up because
Cole
he had
Kmet
a really strong game.
Cole Kmet went from 67.6 to 71.5, 14th best tight end overall.
And he may settle out, just saying. But
Mhm.
last week in particular, he caught so many balls, and PFF, again, doesn't grade the snaps you don't get targeted on. And so his involvement in the offense, the fact that, man, the guy keeps scoring touchdowns. Like, I'm sitting here, you can hear me, if you hear it, Nick, talking through how they probably graded it.
Right,
While
yeah.
also talking about the player. Let me see. It's not going to be Mooney. I swear, if you included ESB, I'm gonna laugh because he might have graded out higher, but there's no way he made your minimum snap count if Kyler Gordon didn't make your minimum snap
I have the data for you because I went deep here. I included him. He is down. I know the minimum snap count is low. I included him just because of his overall point. He's down to 0.1 from last year, and he only had 5 probably snaps that even mattered. Yep.
Let me see. All right, so I've got how many? Does that put me at 3 of the offensive veterans?
So you said Fields, Herbert, Kmet, and DJ Moore. There's one guy
right.
you're missing left.
And I had a feeling because I was like, it's got to be one of the linemen. But it's obviously not right because he wasn't on the team last year.
Mhm.
There's no way. I would be shocked if it's Davis because he had such a bad first game and he doesn't have the shelf, or he doesn't have the playing, the snaps, the total snaps to outweigh that first game. But man, I have to say his name here, Nick, because he looked great in pass protection. If you saw what I saw, I thought Nate Davis was low B ballin'. Is it Larry Borum?
It is not Larry Borum.
Okay.
So Larry Borum went down from 64.7 last year to 55.4.
The other guess that I have would be Lucas Patrick didn't play any good snaps in 2021 or 2022. So is there a chance Lucas Patrick made the list because he purely was medium passable, bad, but not god awful for some of these games?
So here's the part where I'm going to pause with Robert. Okay. To everyone listening, you've heard me on this show. If you think that I was going to have a whole segment dedicated to PFF grades and Lucas Patrick was going to be a positive, you probably don't know me that well.
No, I figured.
Lucas Patrick went down 13.2 from his horrible 2022.
Is he seriously that far down right now?
42.7.
That's unplayable. And he's been unplayable.
Yeah, he's the 34th overall graded center.
Man.
Bad.
Goodness.
All
So
right.
then
So
who
do
is
you want
it?
to give up?
Who is it? Well, not give up, but I could sit here spitballing. I went 6 for 6. There's one
Yep.
that I missed, and
Yep.
I missed it twice. So
Basically, you were like Chicago on Sunday. You had a great 3.5 quarters and then
fumbled it at
just,
the end.
yep, there it went. The last guy, and this is a little bit of a minimum snap count, but I'm including Mercedes Lewis.
Was not a Bear.
Right.
Gosh, now I get what you mean. I assumed you meant, yeah, no, I got you. He has been balling. Mercedes Lewis.
You thought they had to be Bears 2 years in a row.
For some reason, I thought about Mercedes, and then I thought to myself, no, I wasn't a Bear, which is stupid because that means I crossed up the rules because DJ Moore, obviously, I mentioned already. Yeah. So it's that's on me. That's user error.
No, that's okay. He went up significantly. He was at 65.6 to 79 overall. He went up significantly, which in some of my conversations with, and I'll get to my final point with this, but some of my conversations regarding that 4th and 1 play regarded around, if you look who's on the field, Kmet, Tunyon, 2 receivers, you got the shotgun. You don't have your best blocking tight end, Mercedes Lewis, which would have had the double team with Darnell Wright on that play, which he could have got off easier. And you don't have Kari Blasgame in there. Like, again, what are we doing? But anyways, here's my overall point. So those are 5 offensive and 2 defensive guys out of 33. 24% of the team that has an opportunity, I'm not counting the 2 punters and kickers, 24% improved this year. 76% got worse. That is horrendous. I mean, you generally should get a little bit better. So now let's dig a little bit deeper into the numbers. I looked into how much worse they got. The offensive line, on average, and again, this is going to be Patrick, Davis, Whitehair, Carter, Braxton Jones, and Larry Borum. All of them have gotten worse. How much worse? On average, between all of them, they've gotten 14.2 grade worse PFF. That is falling off a cliff.
And you got to remember, for anybody who's not super into PFF, that is the equivalent of about a tier and a half. So that's going from above average down to average and halfway into bad. So that's 14 points. Very similar to school. Is just like it's a pretty heavy dock. Like that's pretty big.
Yep. And then so I added in all of the offense and all of the defense. And if you're curious on anyone, you can ask me here. So I had all of them together and divided by 33. So that'd be the people that went up and the people that went down. The average veteran player for Chicago went negative 6.65 PFF grade on the season. That's on the whole team, going from, a lot of them, a new scheme last year to this year, or they're new, but they should have been, they should have upgraded us, you know what I mean? And playing with each other. And that is, I'm going to lean on coaching. If you were in a new team and you're playing worse than you were previously, that's coaching. If you were with the team last year and doing worse this year, that's coaching, which brings me all the way to my point that's going to be a little bit of controversial here of Chase Claypool. Chase Claypool right now, let's, kick him away from the team and all this stuff. I see Chase Claypool as the scapegoat. They have to have somebody. He's the problem. He's the one. So it takes off the pressure off of Getsy, off of Eberflus, off of every one of these players that is worse. It's not just Chase Claypool. So Chase Claypool's numbers, he went down from 61.8 to 53.3, which is just below the average of all of them. Is he that much worse? Or is it the coaching? He's frustrated with the coaching. DJ Moore's been frustrated. Fields has been frustrated. So to me, I think this whole thing is just this terrible act of, well, we need to blame somebody. And if you're a player on the team, I mean, I'm frustrated as a fan. You don't think the person, this is your job, you'd be frustrated? I think they're frustrated too. So I think this is a ridiculous act of, well, it's his fault. Let's give him the attention. It was his choice not to be there. Oh, wait, hold on. We told him to stay away. Like, this whole thing is just ridiculous.
Oh, it's a complete
And I
mess.
put it all on the coaches.
So is this what we were going to disagree about? Because you mentioned
Yes.
that we were going to disagree about something. No, I am
Well,
100% with you. Like,
yes.
this is insane. On one hand, you've got a Bears organization that is going to make this out as if Chase Claypool is some sort of just problem player that absolutely nobody can work with, which is, a real shame because he's a man in a contract year, which is
Yep.
normally the most agreeable you're ever going to find a player. And he came from 3 years of history of production within a Pittsburgh offense that had him out producing the offensive role he played in Chicago. And then you look, okay, so let's get away from Chase Claypool. Let's talk about Stephon Diggs. Let's talk about Tyreek Hill. Let's talk about all kinds of Kadarius Toney is another example. Like players that are often described as divas or hard to work with. Stephon Diggs requested a trade, but instead, Sean McDermott, also a defensive coach, has been able to harness all of that talent and weaponize it within his offense that just tore Miami in half this last week. Great game for them.
Darnell Mooney is down 10.1 points overall this year. Are we
Oh,
blaming
yeah.
Darnell Mooney? Is Darnell Mooney the scapegoat?
That's the thing. I mean, we look at wide receiver body language from the first 4 weeks now, and you'll get DJ Moore clapping at Justin Fields, Darnell Mooney throwing his hands in the air and jumping up and down, Chase Claypool looking around like, how much more open could I have possibly been? Like, are all of them locker room cancers?
Right. And to me, like the part, and I think we talked about this on the last pod, but I would have liked to see Chase Claypool out there in the fourth quarter when we needed somebody.
Tell me
can help
you weren't
this
missing
team.
him. Tell me they weren't missing him in that moment, like you're talking about. I mean, the fact that the Bears at this point, let's just say it, Nick, because it's brutal, but it's true. The fact that the Bears cannot capably execute an offense where they have to pass and they have to move the ball. At this moment, I don't see it. Do you? Like, it's one thing to play complementary football where you run the ball and you pass the ball off of the run. That's exactly what the 49ers do. Like, it's not news, right? But in situations, whether it's 1 minute situations, whether it's end of game situations where you have to conserve time and therefore you have to keep the ball in the air, the Bears, for now 2 years, have been underwater. And last year, we called it a talent problem. This year, we now have talent sitting inactive. By the time this pod comes out, that talent may not be on the roster anymore. And we traded a second round pick for it. Like, I sit here like, do you think Poles is okay with this? I sit here thinking, how on earth have the coaches failed to get through to him? Because like you're saying, everything going on with Chase Claypool feels emblematic of everything going on within the rest of the roster. And
100%.
To me, 0-5 sticks with everybody. It sticks with everybody. Anything I say in this podcast, however long we talk, Nick, don't ever get it twisted that I like this staff or want to defend what this staff is doing. In fact, any doomsaying that I have about the Bears quarterback situation is purely because I can't see a world where the Bears win enough games to maybe save Matt Eberflus's job, but instead we fire him anyways. And the next head coach comes in and says, but I want to keep Justin Fields. I can't see that world. Does that make sense? Either Eberflus's job is saved, which would be a freaking wild turn at this point. Like, we are going so far down at this stage that to save Matt Eberflus's job would take some titanic quarterbacking.
I mean, you have the biggest comeback ever allowed in Bears history, the longest losing streak in Bears history, and the most points allowed consecutively in NFL history.
Was that one the biggest comeback in Bears history?
Yeah, they allowed. Yep.
That was it. Like down or 21 points that quick. Oh my gosh, Nick.
I mean, that's what I heard. I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me. Historic day for Chicago.
Well,
right?
I mean, especially when you think of 21 points in 17 minutes.
Oh, I mean, it's a flurry. It's unacceptable, to be honest with you, especially because, like, okay, so you want to talk quarterback a little bit? You want to talk quarterback?
Sure, yeah.
My word.
Are you curious on anyone else's individual grade? I have it here.
Oh, I mean, that's the problem, right? If I was a coach taking over this roster, if you told me, you said, Robert, go assess the roster and come back to me. I would practically throw some of this tape out because so many of these guys are being put in such bad positions to succeed, especially when you watch Nick. I'm going to try not to grab my microphone and pick it up and just shout into this thing. Almost literally any other film we watch, people get better opportunities. Like, whether that's the wide receivers getting stronger concepts, they've got Darnell Mooney not breaking half the time. Like, half the time, Darnell Mooney is just running over routes or like drag routes or little routes into the flat where he's deliberately rounding his route. And I'm like, what? Half of Darnell's entire kit is his ability to translate his speed out of his stem into something else. What are we doing? And I mean,
well, and a lot of them were dialed up well last week, but a lot of it is like, okay, you're a decoy, and we hope this one guy gets open. And if that guy doesn't get open, I hope Justin can scramble. Like, that's kind of the offense.
It's kind of the offense. And so it's not that I want to throw out your grades. Do you want to take us through anybody? Because you put in the work. So this is your time to shine.
I guess roughly, I know the average is 6.65 worse, but a lot of that is because, like, how can guys get any lower? Like, Justin Jones is at 1.4 from 45.8 to 44. And
that's despicable that he's that bad twice. Again, remember, Bears fan, 60 is what you get if you didn't play. If you played one snap as the right tackle and they ran to the left and you were just completely out of the play, you will get a 60, and that will be your NFL career. 45 is not just one level below replacement. That is halfway into the next level below replacement. That gets you, Nick, into, in PFF terms, the whole, like, it's impossible to grade out at a 35 over the course of a season, because the moment you start grading into a 40, I'm going to bench you. Like, he's
the 109th best defensive tackle. And then we have, and this is the DNs.
Say that number again. I worry that got lost. How far down the list is he?
So again, 32 teams. You put 2 tackles, 64, right? He's 109th. I mean,
starting though.
And he's starting. Well, here it gets worse though. I mean, you have Dom Rob went down 1.8 from his rookie year. He's 105th D end. Unique Ngakwe went from 51.4 last year to 44.1. He's tied with Dom Rob for 105th, the lowest of his NFL career. Rasheem Green, our favorite, is down 21.3 PFF grade from last year. He's 108th at the end.
Unbelievable.
Every linebacker, the 3 starting linebackers, are all 10 or more points worse than last year. Eddie Jackson's worse. Brisker is 14 points worse. 13.9, but it's close to 14.
Now, Brisker, I got to tell you, I understand there are going to be a lot of people that may find this take a little hot. So just understand that I mean this as level-headed as I can. I am stunned Brisker graded out as well as he did last year. There were so many moments where Brisker was flat out lost, slow to the ball. Nick, I'm not trying to tell you he's bad. He's a safety. When you're okay at safety, you get torched. And then when you take a step into being pretty good now, you suddenly look outstanding. Like, the margin is so razor thin.
Well, he missed a lot of tackles. And to give people an idea of where he is, he's currently ranked worse than Darnell Savage, who is terrible in Green Bay.
Yep. I mean, that's a good point, because he didn't miss a lot of tackles last year. So that's going to probably drag him down. And if anything, it becomes pretty outstanding that Andrew Billings is still grading out not just positive, but quite positive, given how poorly the rest of the defense is performing around him. Let's use Tremaine Edmonds. I went on a rant on Twitter about this. I'll say it again. Tremaine Edmonds is not your Tremaine Edmonds might be your driver. Let's use a golf bag analogy, but he's not an iron, right? This isn't an every hole club. This isn't a, like, oh man, I need to get myself out of a jam. Better use trusty old Tremaine Edmonds. Like, I'm not even playing. I think Tremaine Edmonds is a phenomenal linebacker, not dissimilarly to the way that I thought about Roquan Smith. The problem is, the moment you ask him to take on blockers, oh man, Nick, you are going to have problems
Right.
sprout up immediately.
Well, you just take the Justin Jones in front of you and you put him behind, and that is the worst case scenario. It reminds me a little bit of early career Urlacher, who struggled with the same thing. He's a
Right.
better coverage guy, struggled when guys got in his face. So then they brought in Ted Washington and Keith Traylor, and it helped out quite a bit.
And I mean, that's the thing. Tremaine Edmonds doesn't bother me. Anybody talking about Tremaine Edmonds at this point, no. I will fight the good fight with them because nobody is moving laterally like number 49. Nobody could theoretically cover space like number 49. But the moment, Nick, they're giving him a run gap, we're going to lose that gap. And teams are figuring it out. I mean, we're playing
and he's missing tackles too.
He's not even attacking the runner at times. No. And nor did I expect him to, because he's the only linebacker that doesn't bite on play action, which I like. Like he's not flying downhill until he knows the running back has the ball, which wouldn't bother me if the defensive line could play gap and a half, or God forbid they two gap. Right.
But, whoa, that's too far out there. But I think the overall point is are all of these players just coincidentally playing bad? Like that's not the case.
Did TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds suddenly become complete sieves in coverage?
They forgot how to play football. All these guys, like it's coaching. This is the difference in coaching. And to me, this is why, and again, we've talked about this show. I don't like, because I have a job, I don't want someone saying that I should lose my job, but I think that we're going to have some changes after Thursday.
I mean, there has to be some change. I don't know what they do. I mean, truly, Alan Williams already having left the team puts them in a real hole, because the defensive coordinator taking over is pretty standard. I mean, let me ask you a blunt question, man. Do you want Luke Getsy running this team?
I mean, I think you could have a lot of different people run the team, and is it going to get worse? How could it get worse?
I mean, you say that. Don't say that.
if it does, then it's the path to Caleb. If it gets better, then you'll learn something. But this is about player development, and player development is getting worse. So you got to try something different.
Which is totally fair. I mean, don't hear me standing for Matt Eberflus. I think it's just a tough situation the Bears have backed themselves into because so much is not working. Anyways, let's talk, for instance, because now that we're talking about coaching, I want to talk about what I saw watching the offensive tape. I have never seen this before, Nick. I have never turned on a tape and spent more time watching the defense of that tape than I did the Bears offense. I love the offense. This Broncos defense is one of the messiest units I have ever watched. I mean, trust me, Nick. Do you have any idea how excited I was to try to, I'll just come straight out and say it, like to rake in some Twitter likes off of sweet, sexy Justin Fields throws? Oh, I was so ready. And there were a couple, but man, Nick, like we're talking pre-snap, you can clearly tell they're in man. Then they back off 10 yards off the line of scrimmage and try to play catch man with a bunch of fast Bears receivers. This was batting practice. This was easy. This was offense as easy as I think Justin Fields could have ever seen it, and maybe the easiest he's ever played in his career. And especially for as long as Vance Joseph remained dead set on, for some reason, defending a mobile quarterback in man coverage, the Bears were ripping them in half. Then add all the coverage busts, of which there were way too many. Then
there were a lot of those.
Then add the fact that the Bears were kind of balling on the ground game. Like, as far as not just hitting their blocks, but mixing up what they were doing in that run game well. Finally, Luke Getsy turned his brain on and just opened the playbook from 2022 to get that multiple run game back, even just a little. I'm so frustrated, Nick, because I wanted to see Justin Fields show us that he could play against zone. And then at the end of the game, Vance Joseph shifted into primarily calling things out of zone, and the offense got stuck in the mud again. And suddenly looked a lot like it's not that Fields is like throwing into traffic. He just checks it down. And so against Denver, that meant sometimes we move the ball. Sometimes on 2nd and 10, our check down guy got cut down, forced to 3rd and 10, and then Cole Kmet, despite being open for 6 yards, well, we're not going to throw it to Cole Kmet for 6 yards because why would we? That's not a first down. So we roll out of the pocket, we throw the ball away. That's the 3 and out. that became 14-28. And then the next drive, obviously we had a fumble that can't happen, but I don't really want to focus too much on the fumble because to me, Nick, as we preview the Washington game, this is what they do. They run a spot drop zone a lot with a vicious front four. And this is where Fields is struggling. And so we're going to get a game plan not dissimilar from week 1 Green Bay. And I got to ask you, man, where do you see them score? Like, where do you see the Bears? Help me see the Bears scoring points because their route distribution against zone sucks. They don't do anything to challenge zone defenders. They practically act as if they have no idea zone is coming. And they'll just run a bunch of man-beating reps, despite the fact that the defense is very obviously lined up to get into cover 2 or cover 3. I'm frustrated. Because Luke Getsy does not seem like he's helping anything. That's not a surprise. We've seen enough over the last, 21 games now to have a good inkling on whether Getsy is going to be helpful or not. But also, this takes me back to 2019 in a way that I am not having fun with, where Justin Fields, if you call man, will saw you in half. Those throws he made, like the touchdown throw to Moore, you say what you will about the touchdown throw to Kmet, but that throw to Herbert, like as he just navigated a bunch of man routes, the bootleg throw that he had where he uncorked a sick ball to DJ Moore that he was able to catch in stride. The other sideline throw that was just a flat out coverage bust with the safety playing in Montana and he like Fields roping it over to DJ Moore. Oh my gosh, the arm talent is awesome and he's playing on time and he looks like a different quarterback. And then they turned on the zone faucet. And we saw him again. And I'm sitting here looking at this Jekyll and Hyde act like the problem is it's a pattern. I wish it was streakier. But instead we're getting like, if you do this, this happens. And if you do that on defense, that happens. So calm me down.
Well, you talked about the cover 2, hole shot. That was zone. The Cole Kmet touchdown, he looked off the safety. That was zone.
And a bust. I thought that was man. I got to tell you. Because it looked
Oh, really?
It looked to me.
That hook curl guy who came up, you thought he was supposed to have man with him?
It's hard to tell, but I think so. Because if he's not playing man, then the safety is just lost. Because the single high safety is nowhere. But the down the line corners sit on their receivers, and the slot guy covering Moore is in man. Now, it's very common to play a slot guy with a man tag. That's what the Bears do all the time.
Right. Yep.
So that could be anything. It's hard. I guess it's simply put, it's hard to know. That's a massive gap to leave if that's not a coverage bust. But also, the linebacker makes no attempt to play man. So if somebody's wrong,
that was bad. Well, and then the play. I mean, at the end of the game, the interception. I mean, the earlier version of that, the one to Mooney, I saw Mooney settle in a zone, and Fields hits him in anticipation, and then Moore actually settles in the zone opposite him. He's wide open too. So that's my glimmer of hope. So I got a bunch of stats for you. Okay,
give
for
it
you
to
guys. Me. This might help a little bit. So I know that Washington, I think I looked it up, like they spent their 2017, 18, 19, 20, and 21st, all first round picks, all on defense, all 4 D linemen and then linebacker. And then this year, Forbes as well. So 2023.
And he's a dog. Rookie, but a dog. On outside
he's
corner.
Playing terrible though. Come on now.
And so is Tyreek Stevenson. This is what rookie DBs do. Like,
but I mean, I
like him. Not that he's playing well.
I love his game. Yeah, I loved him out of college, but he's getting torched. He's lit up like a Christmas tree. So we know the Bears defense is bad, averaging 6.1 yards allowed per play, 31st in the NFL. Washington is 5.6, which is 24th allowed in the NFL. So that's also bad. Net yards per pass attempt, the Bears are 31st. Washington is 25th. Rushing yards allowed per attempt. This shocked me, Robert. Washington is tied for 25th in the NFL, which is, again, bad.
Yes.
Chicago is tied for 7th.
And we're actually kind of good against the run game.
I was like, oh, okay.
Well, you have to think about it. We would be in so many less 3rd and longs. This would be so much less embarrassing if we were just a normal defense that couldn't stop the run.
Right.
Instead, this kooky plan to get Andrew Billings, who's just been a baller. I mean, but the intention was
Oh,
for him to just two gap and stop the run with DeMarcus Walker, who also played pretty well against Denver. Like
he's bouncing back. Yep.
this is working to
And,
get
and,
us
and
into
TJ
third.
Edwards is bouncing back. Those are your three guys that are bouncing back right now.
Which would be great if the Broncos, after an entire game of trying to attack the middle of the field for no real reason, they honestly, I'm shocked. I don't know if you felt this way, shocked at how poorly Sean Payton seemed to game plan the early phase of what they were doing within the offense. But then at the end, they realized, why don't we just throw it at these corners? And they did. And suddenly you
Well,
saw
and no one wanted to tackle the running back
no
ever.
third,
So,
third. Yeah. Anyway, keep going. You got
yeah. So some more fun stats here. This one will just completely shock you. Quarterback hurry percentage per drop back.
Oh, it has to be Howell, right?
So no, this is defense.
Okay.
So the amount of
How often they're
percentage,
hurrying?
yes, the percentage of them hurrying the other quarterback per drop back. Chicago is at 6.5%, right? We know they're not doing great.
Not good.
Washington is at 6.5%.
It
Isn't that shocking?
yes. It
Yeah.
has been awfully weird. Just saying how poor the Washington front has played. Now there's a little bit of a sample size question, right?
Right.
Because the teams Washington has played, I mean, outside of so they've got two teams that aren't good outside of the fact that the Cardinals have been like fun, but let's not count them as good for a hot moment. And then they played the Eagles, and then they played the Buffs. Like,
Right. You got some good teams. Yeah.
but the Bears played the Chiefs, so it does cut both ways. But
Yeah.
like you're saying, I mean, for as good as Deron Payne is, as good as Jonathan Allen is, you watch these games, you don't see number 93 and number 94 dominating with a capital D. Like
Mhm.
Chase Young
Mhm.
had a sweet sack, but you're expecting this four when you read them on paper to eat you alive.
Yeah.
They haven't yet.
Right.
And they're not playing well on the ground. But they play what I am worried about before we pass this back to you is just that they play what is currently Fields' kryptonite. If Denver can throw like a stick in the gears, running spot drop zone, then I'm worried about a team that looks like they've practiced it before, because Denver, the first 2 or 3 times they called any spot drop or match, looked like they had drawn it up in like at halftime, where they'd said, "We're gonna run what you guys ran in high school. I know you know how to do it, but
Yep.
we're just gonna run this."
Right.
But keep going.
Yeah. So yeah, a few other ones. So then if you put in hurries, knockdowns, and sacks as a combined percentage, that's where Washington gets it significantly better than Chicago. They're 19th in the NFL. Chicago's 30th. Opponent QB rating, Chicago's abysmal, 115.9.
Right.
Washington's 95.5, which isn't great.
115.9. Oh,
Oh yeah,
my
115.
gosh.
Yeah,
Oh
it's
my
and again
gosh.
that's including the picks that we got against backup Blaine
Yeah, that
Gabbert
includes
or
Gabbert. Oh no. I
so
can't
really be
even
worse.
imagine the Gabbert eliminated QBR, the GE QBR.
Right, yeah. Third down percentage, Chicago's dead last, 32nd, 58.9%, Washington 39.6. And then the last one that shows you overall, again, I think some of that is Buffalo Eagles you had mentioned, but points allowed per drive, Chicago is 2.83 and Washington is 2.52. So my whole point with this is Chicago's terrible. We know this, but I don't think Washington's playing great. And that gives you a little bit of hope. And then, I mean, we'll turn to offense at some point, but I think the hope for offense is they got rolling. They got confidence, which I think confidence is a huge thing. I mean, I've seen it on the field in the locker rooms. You guys have seen it when you can play a lot more confidently, you play on time, you take more risks. I'm going to make this play like you believe a little bit, that
Absolutely.
momentum. And now you add in, which you talked about, Nate Davis. Oh, he looked like the guy you signed.
Let alone if you add in
Here it is. Here it is.
Tevin Jenkins. What if?
Well, because going back to my sheet as I show here, you guys are just listening, right? I can get rid of, let me see here. So, I mean, Cody Whitehair is not playing well either.
No.
I don't care whomever at center. If I can get the 34th worst center off of the field and punt him into the sun, put Cody Whitehair there, or if they deem Patrick better than Whitehair at center. I don't know, whatever. I would doubt that. But doing that and then getting back. Now, again, I don't think he'll be there right away. But Tevin Jenkins was the third best guard in PFF last year. Let's say he's 20th to start off with. That is monumental change. And you have 4 linemen, what you wanted to start the year. And that will help Fields because, as we all know, Fields does not do well with pressure, especially pressure in his face. And this could help everything.
Absolutely. And I mean, I don't know, Nick. I end up just like going almost rounded circles with some of this, right? Because let's use this in like, there's this one play. There are very specific plays that for some reason stick out to me, especially now that everybody's scratched the itch. We've all done it at this point. We could just come out and not treat it like it's a dirty secret. On Monday, the day after a Bears loss, everybody gets sad. You Google like some college quarterback and you start watching at least the highlights of some of the absolute top of the draft picks, right? And then I watch Justin Fields tape. And there are so many of those throws. Can't say it enough. I really want this to be accurate. Robert said Fields threw the ball outstandingly well. But late in the game on 3rd and 6 on that Mooney pickup, the one you're talking about where it's like a sail combined with mesh, it's actually not a bad design, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
I love the way that they gave Fields a deep route option and a short route option if he literally just wanted to work sail. And if not, he could work mesh. If you saw what I saw, Fields stares at Mooney the entire time and just follows Mooney across the field. And Robert Tonyan is debatably open. Depends on if you think you could layer the throw over the linebacker, like as he breaks in. But Tonyan carries the man that Mooney or that would have covered Mooney out of the zone so that Mooney can run open and run free. Which, you know what? If Kirk Cousins did that, I would have said, wow, there must have been some sweet pre-snap tell. Like, that's awesome. But because Fields has such a habit of basically pre-snap picking his receiver, because that's really all this is, right? Let's use like proper words, Nick. There are so many people that go, oh, he can't read a defense. There are so many people that say, oh, well, he doesn't know what he's looking at. No. I think Fields just pre-processes almost everything. Like, I think that's okay to say, too, that he goes into a play saying, I'm going to hit DJ Moore on this slot fade route. And then DJ Moore separates, and he hits DJ Moore on the slot fade route. And when you see these drops lengthen in the pocket, it's generally because that first thing didn't happen. Like, Fields is not clicking from plan A to plan B fast, or plan B to plan C. That one's especially bad. If you've seen what I've seen, where like read 1 to read 2 could take a while, read 2 to read 3 takes flat out too long. So he picks up this conversion to Mooney, and all I'm left thinking is, did he get lucky? Or did he do it on purpose? Because we've seen 3 weeks of we can't hit a receiver against zone unless they blitz. And now we hit one, but you watched him the entire time. And I'm just left saying, Nick, that at the end of the day, this is a great week for Fields to show improvement because this Commanders team isn't that good. But also, it's a spicy Commanders team with an offensive coordinator that I actually think is on fire right now. Did you watch any Commanders offense? Like,
they're dealing. They should have went for 2 to win that game.
I love the way Bieniemy is leveraging trips and bunch sets and wide receiver stacks all over the offense. You'll see them get into a spread set, then motion one of the receivers directly in line with one of the other receivers, and especially going up against a team like the Bears that calls so much spot drop zone. That is exactly how you do what the Kansas City Chiefs did, and you end up overloading areas, right, Nick? Because in cover 2, where there's 2 defenders, there's a hook curl defender and a flat defender, 3 guys overloads you. There's no way 2 defenders can defend 3 guys in that kind of space, especially if Jalen Johnson isn't playing, which would be just a massive, massive L for the Chicago Bears defense.
And Eddie Jackson.
I mean, and I love Eddie Jackson. He plans to play, according to what he said on the radio.
Oh, really?
Could be gamesmanship, but he said he plans to play. The problem is right now, Nick, I would argue the Bears are getting so eaten up at corner, and that's okay. It's Tyreek Stevenson and Terrell Smith. We're down pretty bad at corner right now.
Well, you could argue Terrell Smith's playing better than Tyreek Stevenson.
You really could. Tyreek Stevens is kind of in a blender right now. And it's now it felt as if they targeted Smith a lot more than they targeted Stevenson in the Broncos game. And In particular, I need to go watch the back end again because I wasn't charting who got targeted, but I remember Terrell Smith came up with that huge breakup, but
He did.
also it looked like it was Smith's side that got victimized on the big Cortland Sutton conversion that extended the drive very late and I think got them into the end zone. It doesn't really matter. Both of the corners are
Right,
struggling.
right. Well, also one point too is I heard Jalen Johnson on the radio, and he said he didn't think that the hamstring injury was as bad as people initially anticipated,
Oh, that's good.
and he's not sure if he'd be ready for Thursday, but he says, "I'll be back sooner than people think."
Which also would be awesome. Just keeping let's take the glass and instead of making it half full or half empty, talk about what's in the glass. If they lose on Thursday, they are 0-5. Like,
Yep,
I'm not trying to say put a bullet in it, but Nick, we can speak a little more openly now that they're already 0-4. We are in a bad spot.
we are.
Like the biggest problem that I feel like the Bears had here, if I do you feel this way? I feel this way, is that it's not that hard to go 7-10. It's really not. There are a lot of teams that are going to make it look really difficult because we have this weird run. Do you feel like I do? We have this surprising amount of teams that are in this like Patriots range of talent where they are not good. And going up against a team like the Cowboys, one is going to look like they're in the Premier League, and the other is going to look like they're in what you call in soccer the English Championship League. I don't know why they
Yeah,
named it that way, but this is like,
you get delegated.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Like the Patriots, the Bears, that looks like a football game. The Patriots and the Jets, that was a football game. The Patriots and Dallas, Mac Jones gets benched
yeah,
because
yeah.
something has to be done in a 38-3 blowout. And
Right.
that's what we saw too. Like the Commanders, getting back on topic, and the Bears have both endured getting blown out by a top tier team. So it's not like the Commanders are a super team. But you tell me, Nick, because you've actually coached. What is it like playing an off-schedule road game, especially if it's on a short schedule? In high school, do y'all ever play games that aren't on Friday?
I have once had a game on Saturday because the refs didn't show up on a Friday,
You're
and
kidding
then I've
me.
also had how the playoffs used to work. It used to be about every 4 or 5 days instead of every Friday, and it creates different. I mean, you talk about this. I mean, if this was, I know anything could happen on Thursday. The Bears, we don't have a lot of hope, but you have a Thursday night football. Anything can happen because guys
Anything
aren't
can.
rested. They're not recovered. You have. It's tougher in terms of just there's two different things you have to do to prepare for your next game. You have to self scout, which is
Yes.
scouting yourself, also your tendencies, how your players are doing, fix errors, etc. Then you also have to scout for the next team. And generally in college, I would scout 2 games ahead. That's how I would. That's my role. I had a goal for a role. I wasn't anything big, but that's what I would do.
Go
So
Nick.
when you're scouting two games ahead, right? You're trying to get things prepared. But then when it's that week, then all of your position guys, they're getting all of their work in scouting, and you get way more in depth with it. And so if you only have a couple of days to go as in depth as you would like, you're not going to be as prepared. So you're hoping that here's my hope for Thursday. Again, I no matter what, okay, with the whole Caleb Williams, with the whole whatever, I want Chicago to win.
Always.
I want them to win. I always want them to win, especially now that Carolina could be the number one pick. Doesn't really matter to me. I want the Bears to win and to develop players. And with Nate Davis back and Tevin Jenkins hopefully back, he's practicing. If he starts, and let's say Eddie plays, let's say Jalen plays, here's the hope. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Justin Fields turned a corner. So what it looked like, hopefully.
He played
With
free as hell for
right.
3 full quarters. I mean, he was the best version of himself, man.
And even the interception was anticipation. So
It
it's
was.
like you threw it and he just like let it go. He didn't there was only about a couple of throws. I'm like, he waited too long and thought too much in his head about it. But if you have a better line and now maybe the secondary is somewhat back together, and if Walker is finally playing a little bit better, TJ Edwards is playing a little better, and you finally get to look at like the team you kind of actually designed to have,
Right.
and it's there, you could be a lot better ball club.
You could be a much better ball club. And the only issue and I worry, Nick, that there are some times that I sound like a doomer, and it is entirely an attempt to not get my own hopes high enough to where I can get disappointed again. Like most of what I'm sitting here and saying is a coping mechanism, to be honest with you. I thought it was admirable that the Cardinals played the Commanders so tight. Little did I know the Cardinals would pull out an upset and a half like on the season, because I thought the fact that they were so close with the Niners for so long was very, very admirable indeed. They
Well,
actually
and
played
beat Dallas.
yeah, of course. I figured the Dallas part, that was talking about the half. The one win is obvious, right?
Yeah.
The Texans are out here playing ball, and the worst team you get right now is a team so held back by its quarterback that they can't possibly win a game so long as Bryce Young starts. At least it seems that way this way. Like, I'm so sorry, Bryce Young. Not really though. Like, it's bad. It's bad, man.
It is bad.
The team that almost beat the Seahawks with Andy Dalton, that's a different Carolina team than the team where Bryce Young tries to dip away from a free rusher and gives up a fumble. Pretty much every bit as bad, because I'll hit you with a hot take and I'll let you tell me. I would argue any quarterback seeing a free rusher and giving up a fumble that gets returned for a touchdown pretty much deserves the same grade, because I've seen a lot of people that are talking about the latest Fields fumble. And I mean, let's be really honest, Nick. If Fields turns around and eats an 11-yard sack, the Bears win the game. Like, in my opinion, the Bears defense was playing poor. The Broncos defense got in its way, or Broncos offense got in its way a lot. I was shocked at how often, going back and through the film, the Broncos offense would false start and kill themselves. On a 3rd and 1 becomes a 3rd and 6 becomes a punt.
Yep. And I laughed when it was Mike McGlinchey. That was fun for me.
Right. Like 3rd and 8 became, or 3rd and 10, I think, became like a 3rd and 15, and the drive is over. Like, there's so many of these moments where the Broncos offense couldn't get out of its own way. They scored 2 touchdowns. What are we so scared about? They then, on the 28-28 drive, they finally get Russ to throw a cover 2 hole shot that he'd been basically ignoring all game. And I mean, that hole shot is yawning open, right?
Yeah.
But
Sadly.
after that, they immediately couldn't move the ball. This was a Broncos offense that was not playing well. The fact that the Bears gave up that score is crippling. Just as crippling as Bryce Young giving up the fumble that he gave up against Minnesota. But I say all this, Nick, to point out that the journey back, like, you're totally right. The Bears could be much more competitive if all these things happened. Would they be good yet? Would they be bad yet? Like, would they climb out of being not the worst team in football? I'm really dubious on if Matt Eberflus can do any of that. Because now, I'm just so mad. Like, I don't even think that comes through. Sometimes I almost worry that I sound too upbeat to be furious. But Nick, to me, this is insulting football. I've dealt with some bad football. You know what I'm saying? You've dealt with some bad football.
Well, I mean, a Bears fan my whole life. It's been pretty bad. But like, we're talking about the worst team in football. Like, this is going to be hot takey. I mean, considering the Bears, I mean, point differential and, how they've looked, but I'm not sure Chicago is the worst team in football right now. I mean, you look at New England looks terrible. Pittsburgh looks bad, even though they have 2 wins.
I thought you were going to mention New York.
Well, yeah, the Giants. I mean, I never seen how Giants. I mean, well, Jets, you could say, depending on what version of Zach Wilson you get. you get Daniel Jones. I mean, Carolina. I mean, there's a lot of bad football going on right now, and some of it is like we have no hope for offense at all, and there is hope for Chicago. Like, that's the thing. Like, if I transition this to, well, one thing I want to talk about with the fumble is this: the fumble was on Fields, okay, but with his athleticism and with what he got away with in that game earlier, with the snap count on 2 and Lucas Patrick snaps it on 1, and there's a free rusher and Fields throws a dart slant on 3rd down. Sick.
That actually, straight up, that might be the best throw of his life. And I know that there's somebody out there that's sitting there saying, Robert, are you kidding me? You're about to call a 3rd and 10 conversion on a slant the best throw in his life? Yeah. He never threw through that kind of pressure on that kind of pinpoint accuracy to that, what would you call it? Like, tight window, like that well-covered a receiver. Fields forced it in, just like we've seen Herbert, Mahomes, Allen, all the great quarterbacks do at some point. Man, Nick, if we get that, like, I'm worried he did it on accident. I'm worried that he did
he
that thinking
he
it
said
was
it was his
man.
favorite throw. He said it was his favorite throw too.
Good, because it was dirty.
Yeah,
Like, that's
do
awesome.
that. But like when you add more of that stuff in with him freelancing and hitting Cole Kmet for the touchdown, and I mean him literally dancing back and forth like Dance Dance Fever with the guy in his face, and then buying enough time to hit Herbert for the touchdown. Because if you watch,
So great.
there are many quarterbacks that are going to be able to avoid this guy for long enough and play this game and keep his eyes downfield for a touchdown. That you put all that in a blender, and then you're like, well, yeah, no kidding. He thought he could just throw the ball quickly and not take a sack on that boot. Yeah, you put all that together. Yeah, he got away with it 4 times. Why would the fifth time be anything different? But diving into the offense, right? So I don't think Chicago's the worst team in football because if we look here, yards per play on offense, Chicago averages 0.2 more than Washington. They average more net yards per pass attempt than Washington by 0.4. They have more rushing yards per attempt by Washington than 0.1. Their QB rating is 5.5 better. Third down percentage is better. Red zone touchdown percentage is better. Their points per drive is worse, which is a little bit surprising, 1.96 to 1.83. But their offense is better than Washington. And you had said earlier, and quote, they're dialing some stuff up. Washington looks pretty good. So
Right.
if they're looking good, and if you look at the abysmal game against the Chiefs, the Bears offense is done decently
That's the
this
thing.
year.
So Ben Baldwin released he releases like a tier list every year. He's Ben Baldwin on Twitter. You also find his little name is Computer Cowboy, and he does basically a chart that on the y-axis is your defensive EPA per play, and on the x-axis is your offensive EPA per play. So I can't tell you the numbers. I can tell you the Bears are right there with the Giants in the two worst teams in football performance-wise so far. And here's why. Would you like to guess the placement of the offense in offensive EPA per play?
In terms of like a positive.
In terms of not that. I'm talking ranking wise because you're making a
Oh,
strong case.
in the NFL,
In
in
the
the NFL,
NFL.
I would think the offense is probably like 20th.
Yeah, around there, 10th worst. If I'm doing
Yeah.
back of the napkin math, that's like 22nd. Or would you like to guess where the defense is? As a
31st.
reminder, the Broncos are the worst in history up to
NFL
this
history.
point. So where
Yeah,
are the
they're
Bears?
31st.
They're 31st
Yep.
by a healthy margin too, unfortunately. I'm with you, Nick. When I say the Bears are, if not the, one of the worst teams in football, I'm not talking about the offense. And that's what I think makes this conversation, honestly, so difficult, is we're looking at a quarterback that is not hopeless by any stretch of the imagination. When you see people on Twitter even suggesting that I'm not hitching myself to this wagon yet, but it's on the table, like to trade Fields. The suggestion there is that someone would want Fields. It's not like what hockey. What other sports, whether it's hockey, basketball, baseball, do you follow? Because I'm sure you can conjure up a trade. Anybody out there can conjure up a trade where your GM somehow packaged the worst player on your team with a prospect for at least somebody of decent value. It has happened in every sport. For Chicago or for Dallas Stars, it was Ryan Garbutt and Trevor Daley being traded to the Chicago Blackhawks for Patrick Sharp and a defenseman whose name I forgot. But the point is, Nick, that Fields is not the whole problem. The fact that he can't carry the team just kind of stinks because the team itself, to go back to all the way to what you started this conversation with, is so woeful. And the defense in particular is so woeful that if they end up with 3 wins, it's hard to imagine they won't have a top 5 pick. And then the coach will get fired. And then the new coach will come in with a top 5 pick, if not a top 2 pick. Right now, coin flip odds that they are the first overall pick, which to me ignores the fact that what I'm worried about, Nick, if do you feel like you're seeing this defense same way I am? Because right now, if I was going to write on a board, what is the kryptonite for the Bears defense? It is a veteran quarterback that has played a lot and can get the ball out quickly. I have just described every quarterback in football outside of the ones on the Bears schedule. Like every other team, Jimmy Garoppolo, lol, we can beat that team. The Bears, oh man, Jimmy
I don't
Garoppolo,
know.
Jimmy Garoppolo can sling. Like Carolina, lol, Kirk Cousins almost gave us the game. The Bears, Kirk Cousins may set another completion record for all I know. Like, you get what I'm saying? Like,
No,
it's
you're right, because it's like that's how I look at this game. I'm like, I look at the quarterback rating that Howell has, and he's played worse than Fields this year. But I'm like, we couldn't stop a nosebleed if we had a mile's worth of cotton
right,
balls. Like, there's no way we can stop anything right now. So it's like
right.
you're basically just hoping you score on every drive, and they'll mess up one time.
It's damn near that. Like, am I worried about the Bears maybe scoring 17? That's not the issue. The issue is I'm worried about Sam Howell hanging another 30 burger on this Bears defense. And I don't think the offense has the chutzpah right now, or whatever you want to call it, right? Like, I think I'm picking a vocab word too much there. So, like, I don't think Luke Getsy has it in him to chain 5 touchdown drives together in one game, even 4 touchdowns and a couple field goals. Like, it's just tough sledding. And if you lose
Mhm.
this game, you're 0-5, and you might, fingers crossed this isn't the case, but you might be the only winless team in football at any given weekend at that point.
Yep.
Now,
Yep.
it's great when you look at the other side of the coin, Nick, that the Bears happenstantially own both of the picks of the
Yep.
winless teams. But that doesn't help us this year. And I would argue that you and I can put on our okay, what if we're tanking hat another day. We're too early in the schedule for that. I think you're still allowed to be just disappointed with where
Mhm.
things are right
I
now.
I mean, in your wildest nightmares, I did not think Chicago would be this bad.
Not this bad. No way. No way. The giving up, what you said, it's 50%, over 50% on third downs. That would be indicative of getting run on. Think about that, man. Like, the problem is the average third down that the Bears are giving up is probably like 7 yards, because when they get walked down the field, they get walked down the field quickly, but they actually force quite a few third and eights, if you're seeing what I'm seeing.
It
Like,
it's it it's 58.9 to make it even worse for you.
it's almost 60%. That's almost a completion percentage. That is a higher number than Jordan Love's season completion percentage, going off the top of my head. So that
It
may be
is.
right. But,
No, he's 55. Yep.
like, what are we? How do you expect to win any games? In fact, honestly, because this isn't a common thing that I think any fan on the internet should be saying, legit, how does Matt Eberflus get another job as a defensive head coach? Or not a head coach. How does somebody want him as their defensive coordinator at this stage? Like,
Yeah.
this is the Eberflus defense. He had $100 million and 5 top 70 draft picks to put this together. And we have this. Like,
Well,
I'm
where's the hits? Where's the hustle? Where's the taking the ball, not turnovers, right? I mean, I don't see any turnovers. I mean, obviously sacks isn't a big thing, but there's nothing good on third down. The pressure isn't there. The hustling, the punching the ball. I saw one punch out by Jalen Johnson. It's all I've seen, and turnovers against backup, quarterbacks.
great.
Like, this is horrendous level.
It's horrendous. They seem like they want long DBs so that they can stand in place and be long instead of being long press man corners. So instead, they draft guys with length that every other coach on the planet uses in press, and ask them to do something that coaches ask 5'9" people like Greg Stroman to do. Is it actually any surprise Greg Stroman's the only one who looks comfortable in this defense? Like,
Well, and Greg Stroman, by the way, now that you brought him up, is 14.9 PFF grade worse than last year.
it's just embarrassing, man. Like, because it's a thing. Like, I grew up in Dallas, Texas. So the idea that the people have been dumping on the Bears for my entire life isn't news. Like, at least Dallas goes 8-8. They got mad about Jason Garrett for forever. But when the Bears had Lovie Smith, people actually were vaguely afraid of playing Chicago. When Chicago was even in their Trestman era, we had some good times. The John Fox era was bad, but I don't think any of us were under the illusion
Well,
that
Trustman had that run though when he had the offense.
That's my point. Like, this is a team whose offense is unquestionably the best part of the team, and
Mhm.
everybody on the internet is mad about it. Like, that part's better than the
Yeah.
defense part. I just think people have collectively given up on the defense, and they're not
Yeah.
wrong to.
Well,
So,
I think in general people don't follow closely, but I don't think people know the horrendous level that the defense is at. Like it's not even you could literally put flags on your quarterback, and I don't think we're going to grab the flag when he drops back to
oh my
pass.
gosh, that's embarrassing, but I think you're right. And then we'll have these moments, right? Where the Bear or like Justin Jones at one point, he didn't sack Russ, nothing close, but he like fell into the pocket and Russ got flushed out. And suddenly the defense looks vaguely okay. Like you still had I've got this play that I found. It's hilarious. I don't know if it's fair to Russ because I don't know if a long throw actually gets there in time, but there's a Broncos receiver that's just like hanging out in the end zone, and you got like a solid 5 Mississippi count of him just hanging out on his own in the end zone, waving at the quarterback like "throw it to me." and but within that, it's like the Bears will get this occasional pressure that's neat, but it's just not consistent enough. And against Sam Howell, it won't surprise me if they get quite a bit of pressure. That would be great too. If he
Yeah,
wasn't
Howell
at this
gets
point,
sacked a lot.
at this point he's really practiced about it. And
Yeah.
Bieniemy is a West Coast guy, and the last West Coast guy we played, I'm looking at you, Matt Nagy / Andy Reid, diced this defense up to the point where what was it, Nick? They got one stop, and then every subsequent drive after that they got scored on.
Well, the other thing I was going to mention, you said how like Justin Jones just fell into Russ and flushed him from the pocket. That reminded me of the Kansas City game when I forgot what DN it was, accidentally fell and hit Mahomes' ankle and sprained his ankle. Like it was on accident that we hit Patrick Mahomes. It wasn't on
Right,
purpose. Like
right.
nothing we designed. It's just you have to go off balance and just fall, and you might hit their quarterback.
It's like not football. Like I'm so frustrated because
It
it is.
it reminds me, I don't know if you have siblings or not, or older
Mhm.
people that you played, sports with. It reminds me of your older brother playing you in basketball, and he
Yes.
knows every time he can stuff your shot, and then he can rise up and hit a jumper over you. That's what it reminds me when the Bears are playing defense.
Right. And so for anybody out there that feels this fury and you're just as disappointed as we are and you hate it when people talk about tanking, this is why people talk about tanking. Because whether they can verbalize it or not, they can see how bad this team is. I think you'd agree, Nick. And just don't know why. Like, for instance, I'll ask you, Nick, the hardest question, I think any Bears fan would have to answer right now. What would you say is the realistic win ceiling for the team right now? 5 wins?
Um, Ceiling. Ceiling is, yeah, 5 or 6. Then that's
Ceiling.
like everything goes perfect.
So what if it doesn't? Now let's call it the realistic ceiling, right? Where the most things go right that can go right. Fields is good, right? Takes a solid step forward. But the defense kind of is what it is until one of the players kind of wakes up. You get what I'm saying? Like what is this? A four win team at that point?
Yep.
So does that save Fluce's job?
No.
So if Fluce is gone and then there's a new offensive coordinator, what would Fields have to have done to justify keeping him?
Well, honestly, what this reminds me of is, and what will have to happen for Fields to stay on the team, even if they have the first pick, he's going to have to turn into Justin Herbert, who Justin Herbert is like what Fields was on Sunday. Puts up great numbers, looks fantastic, might make a mistake or two, but you're just like, man, this guy plays awesome. The defense is trash. The analytics, Brandon Staley is going for
Right.
it on their own 25, and they're not converting. And they
It's
get back to the
ridiculous stuff.
Raiders.
It's
Like,
ridiculous stuff.
crazy stuff. Like he's gonna have to put up games like this. And again, I know he turned the ball over twice. I mean, not perfect where you're 24 of 25. The only completion's a Hail Mary, but like 300-yard games, 280-yard games, 3 touchdowns, like really good games. He's gonna have to do that. I would say probably at least 7 more times
At least.
this year.
I mean, and even then, he may have to break 4,000 yards to
Yep.
really turn heads just because the worse the team performs, the easier it is to just move on and not have to stake your claim to your guy. Because the higher the Bears pick gets, just imagine the opportunity cost. Imagine whether, Nick, it's you because I'm talking to you, or whether it's
Mhm.
the viewer at home sitting here listening. Imagine you got the Bears job. You got pick number 1 and you did not take a quarterback, and then Fields fails under any circumstance. You are fired. Maybe not directly. It may be more of this like hanger on thing where you get fired at the earliest opportunity after that. But you know what I mean, Nick? Where it's
Yeah.
like just in the world of buying time and in the world of external pressure, there will be so much pressure to move on from Fields at this point that you better have a reason not to. Why am I talking about all this? It's because the bar got so much higher once we started losing all these games. Once the Eberflus drama got to the point that it did, once the locker room devolved into utter chaos that can't seem to even keep its active weapons active, looking at you, Chase Claypool, like
Yeah.
things got so bad that for Fields to escape the melee, he's either going to have to escape it via a trade, or he's going to have to play so well that he is impossible to let walk out your door. And that is a different standard than year 3 growth path. You know what I'm saying?
No, I'm 100% with you. This is something I think that's very interesting, though. I was just calculating some numbers because I was just curious. So we know that, again, with these numbers, you have to take the highs and the lows. That means a 99-yard passing game from Justin Fields. Okay,
Right.
he's on pace for 29 passing touchdowns and 3,660 yards passing.
Yep.
And a lot of interceptions because he has 5 right now. So it'd be like probably like 21 or 22, which that shouldn't stay. But if you said coming into the year, we talked about this prediction show,
I know.
3,600 yards, 29 passing touchdowns. Would you take that?
I would have thought for sure that it wouldn't have felt so lifeless, right? Where we have this magical game, against the worst defense maybe ever, right? And if I sound like a grain of salting, it's because I did this already, right?
Mhm.
I thought
Mhm.
Mitch turned it around against the Lions a lot. And that stretch where Mitch looked like money against
Yep.
Detroit, then Minnesota, then Jacksonville, like it felt like you could see it. It felt like you could build on that. And then we played the Saints in the playoffs and they shuttered him. And it's
Mhm.
it feels like that again to me. But again, we talked about this early in the year, Nick. These are the scars talking. So is it real? Well, we don't know. To say you know is to pretend like you see the future. That's just not being realistic. Because, like you're saying, those numbers are awesome. But I know for certain that if they cut the game tape when the game was over, Fields had 125 yards passing against Green Bay. The Buccaneers game totally stands. The Chiefs game, how many yards did he have before the game was over? Like, because they didn't move the ball a ton in garbage time, but even the 99 is a high figure compared to the way the ball
They
was
barely
moving.
had any plays in that game either.
I mean, really though. Really though. And so we look at this and it's like Fields throwing for 3,700 yards, 29 touchdowns, and 500 rushing yards in a season where they go, what, 1-16? I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah.
Because I
You know,
really,
also,
yeah.
also one thing that's funny. So when I was going over the all 22 tape, and then you look at the stats too. So I follow that as I go through it. They had that quarterback like counter or power designed for him. They just got blown up in the backfield because the end crashed and hit him
Right.
before he had kicked out. They called that a sack. Do you know that?
That's ridiculous. I was
I'm like,
worried they would.
what?
Because
Sack.
while it looks like a draw when you know what you're looking at, it also looks like the quarterback takes the snap and gets hit. And
Right.
so,
Like that was a designed run.
do they call designed runs sacks? Like
They
if
shouldn't.
Lamar sweeps, do they call it a sack when if he gets TFL'd? I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, in my mind, that shouldn't be,
I mean, it
because
shouldn't.
a sack you should be able to throw.
It
In my
shouldn't
mind.
be. But
Right.
tap passes shouldn't get counted as passes either.
I'm with you on that one.
And they
Yep.
do.
Yep.
But either way, let's close this thing up with a score prediction because we're all busy people. You've got a Fields video to make.
Oh yeah, I got to finish up my all 22 Fields tape. I'll let you go first because I think I went first last time.
I want this to be the triumphant game where Fields proves everybody wrong. But there's so many things going against Fields in this one. It's a Thursday night game. So everybody's going to get short scouted, meaning that while the Bears offense in theory could potentially go up against a more stale version of the Commanders defense, the Commanders defense is not that complicated in the first place. And the way that they normally run things is not to Fields' liking. So it's going to be a matter of how well the Bears can run the ball against the Commanders. I bet they can run it pretty well, but I don't trust this team to chain plays together without throwing the ball at the end of the day. And so if I'm looking at this, I think we're going to see a 24-13 game where the Bears also collect a late field goal or something to make it look a little closer than it is. Not quite Seattle Giants, but a similar vibe where the game feels tight until suddenly you realize that the offense is not scoring, or at least that they're not going to. Now, one quick asterisk on this, Nick. The Bears seem to do really well on their scripted drives. So
Mm-hmm.
the Bears may score quick and then fade. And against a team that may not be able to score 1,000,000 points, that could be a real positive. But the Eberflus defense versus Sam Howell and Bieniemy's offense is not a matchup that I like. I think the way they run their offense shreds zone pretty well. And if they do switch to man, Terry McLaurin and a couple of the other Commanders receivers are good enough to punish you that way. So I think that the Commanders break 20, the Bears do not, and the Bears end up 0-5 and chaos ensues. What do you think?
I'm going to throw out a prediction here, Robert.
Give me the dub.
I'm going to say Chicago wins this game.
Hell yeah.
I mean, it's Thursday night football. I think a lot of things can happen. I look over here at the injury report for Washington, and Curtis Samuel is DNP, which is not good with a quad. He's been pretty, done well for them. Jahan Dotson is limited with an ankle. Christian Holmes, which I'm trying to remember if he is their backup nickel or not. He is DNP with his back. And they've played 4 games and they've allowed 33 or more points each of the last 3 weeks on defense.
Mm-hmm.
And they beat the Broncos by 2. We were right there. And I'm going to tell you what, we're due. So Chicago is going to win this game 31-24.
I love we're due. We're due is something my dad used to say constantly. And sometimes it happened. And we'd go, we're due, and slap 5. But I swear the we're due game in my own memory is like 2-9. but I would love to. I actually don't know what would happen, to be honest. Like a 1-4 Bears team going into the mini bye, that's like not a firing. You know what I mean? And so the team's direction makes a lot more sense at just what like your fingertips if they lose. But just because it makes sense doesn't make it better. Obviously, like we do want the Bears to win, and so we will see. Nick, what do you have coming up that people can look forward to?
I'm going to hopefully release my all 22 Justin Fields tape later today. That's going to take some time. There's a lot of plays they went through. And then we talk about this almost every episode, right? But I got my DFS article that comes out on Fridays, and it's contrarian. And again, like I said, I did really well in DFS this last week. I won thousands of dollars, we will say. And on my contrarian team, I had Justin Fields, which was contrarian because it's like, man, are we really going to trust this guy? Bustin Fields, especially in the DFS community, like don't go with that. But I went with him, and obviously you had to get a little bit lucky. So maybe tune into that Football Guys, contrarian article. It could make you some money.
That's awesome. I've been loving reading that lately. I'm not a DFS guy, but it's always fun to just track who you're picking for that exact reason. And then as far as what I've got going on, just keep an eye on bearsblog.com. It's a short week, which is going to be pretty crazy. I have no idea what we'll do. It's usually just a bunch of late nights, but we will be with you throughout it. You'll see, assuming that you got to this point in the podcast, we will be going probably not live. So there will be an episode popping up on Friday of Bear With Us. And then you and I will get to sleep over the weekend, Nick. But for as much as we can. I mean, got to remember, because I'm such a big college football fan, Nick, I will let you know because you know me, lifelong USC fan over here, that they have a phenomenal stretch coming up against Notre Dame, then Washington, then Oregon, and they've still got like Oregon State left on the schedule. Like if you're looking for test games for my my favorite team, obviously,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
University of South Carolina, it would be those games, which could make for some electric Saturdays. But
Well, a little fun fact here, Robert. I let you know I will be in the stands watching Notre Dame USC. So
that's awesome.
I will be watching
What?
Caleb Williams and a lot of those guys closely.
Caleb, who? I don't know who you're talking about.
He's gonna go to some other team because Justin Fields is gonna rise up.
He's gonna
this
rise
week,
up, baby.
and we are gonna crush Washington Commanders.
Why are you there? Are you a Notre Dame grad, or did you just get tickets?
My dad's a big fan, and he got
That's
tickets,
awesome.
so we're gonna be going.
That's awesome. That'll be great. That'll be such a fun
it's a really nice venue. If you've never been, it's similar to Michigan, where it's just a smaller stadium where you walk in and then you walk down. It's it's historic. It's cool
awesome.
to go.
Now you got me wanting to go, but
Yeah.
it'd have to be another time. Either way, Nick, thank you so much for hanging out with me. Listener, make sure you leave us a 5-star review on whatever viewer platform you're on. We've got like 8 of them now. I appreciate you guys so much. Let's see if we can't get up to, 12, right? But until next time, bear down, and thanks so much for bearing with us.